What else is there to do around Banff besides hiking? If this question has ever crossed your mind, or you're worried about filling your time in Banff without full days of hiking, then this episode is for you. Welcome back to the Banff Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Celine Brewer, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether this is your first episode or you're on a listening marathon, I truly hope you'll find these episodes helpful as you plan your trip to Banff National Park and the surrounding area. Before we get started today, I need to apologize. I don't even know what happened with that last episode on Lake O'Hara, but trust me, I had no intention of publishing that unedited version. Thank goodness something more embarrassing didn't happen in that episode. As you can tell, they clearly need editing after I record them. Podcasting is definitely not as easy as it seems. Anyways, I know that must have been super annoying to listen to, and I'm sorry that happened. That was actually the only episode in all 53 that I didn't give a full listen to before hitting publish, so I guess that's how things go. Rest assured, I listened to this episode in full before hitting publish, so you will not have to listen to me repeat sentences or paragraphs over and over. All right, today we're talking about all the incredible ways to experience Banff that have nothing to do with lacing up hiking boots. I get this question probably more than any other in my inbox. Celine, we love the idea of Banff, but we're not really hikers. Is it still worth visiting? And every single time, my answer is immediately yes. I live in Canmore, just outside the park gates, and I spend time out here year round. So I know that some of the most memorable moments in this place have had nothing to do with a trail, and that's coming from a hiker. Now, before I get into the details, I also want to just talk about some of the other episodes. You'll hear me mention them throughout this episode as well. But even episode 34, I cover all of the best things to do in the town of Banff itself. And that one is also a great companion to today's episode because there's a lot of in-town experiences that are perfect for non-hikers too. And everything I'm talking about today is covered in detail in my blog post at travelbanffcanada.com. And the post is called Banff for Non-Hikers. It has all of the booking links plus some Banff discounts you can sign up for. Now, I do earn a small commission when you book through my links, and that is always at no extra cost to you. But I do genuinely appreciate it. It's what helps me keep this podcast going and writing free content for all of you. So if you're going to book anyways, if you want to use my links, it does make a big difference to me. All right, let's get into the fun part. Let's start with the experiences that give you the biggest views for the least amount of effort. And in Banff, that means gondolas and chairlifts. If there's one thing on this entire list that is ideal for non-hikers to do to still get amazing views, it's to ride one of the gondolas. For the Banff gondola, you board the gondola at the base of Sulphur Mountain, ride up, and the doors open to 360-degree views of 6 separate mountain ranges. At the top, there's a boardwalk, an interactive discovery center, and the historic Cosmic Ray Station, plus some restaurants. At Lake Louise, the sightseeing gondola takes you high above the valley, and this one has the bonus possibility of spotting some grizzly bears on the slopes below you as you ride up. At the top, there's a wildlife interpretive center, plus those sweeping views of the Victoria Glacier and Lake Louise itself. It's a completely different vantage point than what you get from the lakeshore. Now, this is one I love recommending to people who want a more low-key experience. The Mount Norquay chairlift is an open-air ride that is much quieter than the other gondolas. And you're genuinely up there with almost no crowds. It delivers this beautiful panoramic view of the Bow Valley and the town of Banff below. At the top is the Cliff House Bistro, which is a charming historic little restaurant perched right on the mountainside. It's perfect for a coffee or lunch with a view. Now, this one often flies under the radar, and I think that's a shame. And then, of course, the one that I love, and you all know I love it, is Sunshine Meadows. You take the Sunshine Gondola up and then hop on the Standish chairlift to the Standish viewpoint. And you end up looking down on that alpine meadow surrounding 3 mountain lakes and more peaks than you can count. In summer, there's wildflowers everywhere. Now, you can do as little or as much as you want once you're up there. If you're up for it, I do think a small, easy hike is well worth it, but you can also just enjoy the viewpoint. If you're headed to Jasper, there's also the Jasper Skytram. It's the highest and longest aerial tramway in Canada, whisking you from the valley floor to the alpine zone in just minutes. At the top, you're rewarded with views, access to the Whistler Summit Trail, Again, if you want to hike, you don't have to, but that option is there. But it gives you a whole new perspective on the Canadian Rockies. Now, if you're going to book the Jasper Sky Tram or Banff Gondola, I would love if you used my links for those. They do pay me a small referral commission at no extra charge to you. All right, now it's time to experience the area from another perspective. Obviously, water is such a huge part of what makes Banff special. Those glacier fed lakes and rivers are like nothing else, and you can experience all of it without hiking. I know canoeing is on most people's lists when they come here. You're gliding across that water that gets its color from the rock flowers suspended in it. These incredibly vivid turquoise lakes that look almost fake in photos and are somehow even more stunning in person. Now, for those, you don't need to book ahead. You just get to show up and rent your canoe, get a quick orientation, and you're off. You have options like Lake Louise, Moraine Lake, and Emerald Lake over in Yoho National Park, and even from the Banff Canoe Club in the town of Banff. There are plenty of opportunities to experience canoeing on these stunning lakes. If you're headed up to Jasper, Pyramid Lake and Moline Lake are also two places that you can canoe. Now, another one that I want to highlight, because it's one of those activities that is so wonderfully peaceful and doesn't really get a ton of attention, is a gentle float down the Bow River. Now, not whitewater rafting. You're in a raft on a guided float. The current does most of the work, and you're just surrounded by those towering mountain peaks and the forest, and maybe if you're lucky, spotting some wildlife along the banks. Now, even if you are a hiker, this is a great way to give those lakes a break and still take in some of the scenery. There's options for river floats in Banff, Canmore, and in Jasper on the Athabasca River. And an added bonus is you're completely away from the crowds. While everyone else is in a lineup trying to get their pictures at Lake Louise, you're drifting through a valley in near total silence. Now, Lake Minnewanka, the largest lake in Banff National Park, has a guided boat cruise. And now I've taken it multiple times and I still do love it. Your guide tells you stories and talks about the history of the area as you cruise past mountain scenery and the forest. Again, Jasper has the Moline Lake boat cruise as well, so both of those are well worth it. I would probably just choose one if you're going to both areas, but make sure you do book them ahead as they do sell out. And if you want something a little bit more active on some calm water, stand-up paddleboarding on Johnson or Two Jack Lake is perfect. Johnson Lake is ideal for beginners. It's small and protected, and the water is generally calm. And on a still morning, the mountain reflections are just absolutely perfect. And you can rent inflatable paddleboards in both Banff and Canmore. All right, we've gone to the summit of the mountains. We've seen the mountains from the water. What else could there be? Now, this is one set of activities that a lot of people don't know about. The mountains also have activities for the most adventurous of you out there, and a lot of them get you deep into the mountain terrain that most visitors never see. Now, this means incredible scenery and no crowds. Two that I think are absolutely fantastic to do are whitewater rafting or canyoning. So whitewater rafting can be done either in Kananaskis or on the Kicking Horse River, and there are also family-friendly options for those. Canyoning is a fun way to rappel down waterfalls. Now, there's a few different locations where you can do that, and I also have a discount for canyoning around here. So if you want to sign up for my Banff discounts, you'll get that. Our family did canyoning together, and it was just an absolute blast. I'll also link to the blog post all about the canyoning that we did. The next thing is the Via Ferrata, so Italian for Iron Road. Basically a route up a mountain face with iron rungs, cables, suspension bridges, all bolted into the rock. Now you're harnessed in and clipped to the cable the entire time, and you can actually do this at Mount Norquay right outside the town of Banff. And they have multiple levels, so if you're a brand new beginner to this, that's okay. And the views you get from up there are something that you just won't see any other way. Now, maybe not as adventurous as some of those other ones, but cycling might be one of those best kept secrets for experiencing Banff without hiking. And I'm not even talking about mountain biking. There are a ton of paved trails and scenic roads. As an example, the Legacy Trail, a 22-kilometer paved path that connects the town of Banff and Canmore. Now, it runs close to the highway, but the mountain scenery is pretty great the whole way. And it's manageable for most fitness levels. And of course, e-bikes are available if you want to cover that distance with less effort. And then you've heard me talk about it before is the Bow Valley Parkway. That's a secondary highway that runs parallel to the Trans-Canada between Banff and Lake Louise. And in May, June, and September, the eastern section of it is closed to vehicles because it's part of a cycling pilot program. And when that's in effect, you're cycling on the road with no cars. Episodes 12 and 24 are worth listening to if you want to explore Banff on two wheels. Now, if you want the most jaw-dropping perspective on the Canadian Rockies, a scenic helicopter ride puts you up and above remote glaciers, alpine lakes, mountain ridgelines that you genuinely cannot see any other way. Now, I know this is a huge splurge, but if it's in the budget, it will be unforgettable. If you want something a little different that's equally crowd-free, ATV tours take you into the backcountry on guided routes that get you well off the beaten path. You will just need to travel a little further away from Banff to do that, as there's no ATV tours in the national parks. Now, who's into caving? You can explore the Rat's Nest Cave just outside of Canmore. If cave exploring is something that you love, or maybe you're new to it and want to try it, you can do that right here. And the best part is that because the temperature stays consistent, you can also do this all year round. Again, you can find details and links to all of these activities in my full blog post that I'll link to in the show notes. Now, don't worry, I know that those adventurous activities aren't for everyone. For those of you who want more sightseeing, there are so many incredible scenic drives around Banff National Park. I have to start with the Icefields Parkway because it's regularly named one of the most scenic drives in the entire world. I don't think I'd argue with that. You're passing glaciers, lakes, waterfalls, mountain peaks the whole way. So you can head to episode 23 for all of the details. Or if you want episode 28, where I go into detail on the full list of scenic drives. Now, I've already talked about it from a cycling perspective, but if you have the time, you can still drive either a portion of the Bow Valley Parkway in May, June, and September, or the entire thing in July and August. So that runs between Banff and Lake Louise, and you can take that instead of the Trans-Canada Highway. It's slower, quieter, lower speed limit, lots of pull-offs, and obviously the potential for spotting wildlife. There's also the Vermilion Lakes Road just outside of the town of Banff. It's short, it's just 4.3 kilometers, but it's also one of my go-to for sunrise or sunset. You know, the road winds along the Vermilion Lakes, and you get the reflections of Mount Rundle in the water. Definitely bring your camera for that one. And then last but not least, the Lake Minnewanka Scenic Drive is a great spot to even return to in the evening. Maybe you've already driven it to do the Lake Minnewanka boat cruise, but don't hesitate to do it again just for a scenic drive, or even just to look for wildlife, or to catch it at a different time of day. If you go really early in the morning or in the evening, sometimes it'll be calmer and you'll get more mountain reflections. And plus, it's really close to the town of Banff. Now, aside from those scenic drives, there's lakes, waterfalls, and viewpoints that are well worth seeing. For viewpoints, the Mount Norquay Lookout, Surprise Corner, Bow Falls, and the Hoodoos viewpoints are all near the town of Banff and easily reached by car. Takia Falls is an example of an easy-to-see, spectacular waterfall. And then, of course, all of the lakes that you're going to see along your scenic drives. So plenty to see without ever needing to do a hike. All right, if I haven't tired you out completely, or maybe you're just looking for some options for relaxing, there's some of that too. Now, if you really want to treat yourself, there are two incredible Nordic spas in the area, both in Kananaskis and a brand new one in Canmore. Or maybe you just want to go visit the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, known as the Castle in the Rockies. It's worth visiting even if you're not staying there, walking the grand hallways, look up at the architecture, grab a drink at the Rundle Bar. The views of the Bow Valley from the terrace are something else. You can also do an afternoon tea at either the Fairmont Banff Springs or the Fairmont Chateau Lake Louise. Sit by a window with mountains filling the view, your pot of tea, scones, finger sandwiches. Just make sure you book those in advance. And then finally, there's some really beautiful walks around both the town of Canmore and the town of Banff. In the summer, the path towards Bow Falls in Banff is dotted with artwork from local artists and is part of the Art in Nature program. It's just a really lovely way to spend an hour, plus you get to see Bow Falls at the end. In Canmore, the Bow River Trail to the historic Engine Bridge has stunning views, and the Policeman's Creek Boardwalk is a short, easy walk right from downtown. There are more options in both of the towns as well, and I'll link to those in the show notes. All right, let me run through a few practical things before we wrap up. Number one, book ahead. The Banff Gondola, Lake Minnewanka Cruise, whitewater rafting, Columbia Icefield Adventure, afternoon tea, all of those things can sell out in the summer. So don't leave it for the day before. If you know when you're coming, you might as well book before you leave home. Now, Banff is genuinely wonderful in every season, so you get something a little different every time. Summer gives you lakes, gondolas, rafting, cycling, canoeing all at once. Spring and fall can mean fewer crowds. You get different things like cycling on the Bow Valley Parkway when it's closed to cars. And then, of course, winter is completely different. I did a whole episode on that called Banff for non-skiers, which you can listen to on episode 38. Of course, there's always the part about being prepared. So have your rain jacket with you, even if it's a sunny day. Bring a few extra layers. You never know if it's going to cool off. And don't let the weather stop you, because if you look at the forecast and decide not to do something, you might never see anything. Finally, these are such a great way to get away from the crowds. The Bow River Float, cycling the Bow Valley Parkway, the Mountain Rockaway chairlift, a morning paddle at Two Jack Lake. These get you into scenery without the shoulder-to-shoulder crowds that can sometimes take the magic out of those iconic spots. So mix in a few of those more crowded activities with something a little quieter, and I promise it's just going to make your trip feel so much more special. Okay, there you have it. Gondolas and chairlifts, waterfalls, floating down the river, paddling on turquoise lakes, cycling, scenic drives, while mountains tower over you. All of it is possible without a single challenging hike. Head over to my blog post at travelbanffcanada.com, so Banff for non-hikers, for all the details, insider tips, and everything we covered today. We're always adding things to our Banff discounts page, so make sure you sign up and get those discounts too. The link will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Banff Travel Podcast. I'm sure you're glad you didn't need to listen to me repeat sentences and paragraphs over and over this time. If you found it helpful, head to banfftravelplanning.com/podcast and leave me a note. I genuinely love hearing from listeners and learning where you're coming from, what's bringing you to Banff, and what you're hoping to see. Until next time, happy trip planning, and I'll see you out on the trails.